program session of the day, I should say, is my favorite social network, the only one I actually spend any time on, which is LinkedIn. Love LinkedIn. I'm a huge, huge fan, and I'm a huge fan of Tiffany. Tiffany Murray, I'm going to let you introduce your panelists, and then I will turn the screen over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Jeff. It's great to be here. I'm excited to be the last session of the day. That's great. Save the best for last, as they say. I'll do a brief introduction of myself and then tee up for the panel to do intros as well. So I have over 20 years of HR technology experience. I joined LinkedIn about a year ago. Over the course of my career, I've had the opportunity to work with all types of organizations. That's something that I really love about the path that I've taken. So everything from public to private organizations, as small as just around 100 employees to hundreds of thousands of employees at Coca-Cola. And so, LinkedIn, after about 10 years, has been a step back into a global organization, which is exciting. But one thing that is similar across all of the either clients or FTE roles that I've had is the vendor ecosystem when it comes to HR tech. That doesn't change, right? Many organizations, even smaller ones, have multiple vendors. So this topic is front of mind, I think, on both sides of the house, for providers as well as for customers. And so I'm glad to be able to lead this session today. We have some exciting folks with some great input and opinions that are joining us. And so, before I get to that, I want to give 3 fast facts about this panel. So together, we collectively have over 80 years of experience. Now, none of us is that old, but if you take our collective experience, it's 80 years. What I also found interesting in talking and preparing for this session is that we've all worked with or for a wide range of vendors. And by my count, it's probably at least 50. So as I looked at even some of the folks that have registered for this session, those are names that I'm familiar with, and I'm sure our panelists are familiar with, like HireVue, ADP, Accenture. So that's kind of exciting as well. And then the last, of the 3 fast facts is that we are actually kind of covering both coasts today. All right, so I'm in Atlanta, and we have Aaron in Orlando, and then we have Chris and Abhishek who are on the West Coast. But I want to just give time for each of them to introduce themselves to you. As I mentioned, we have Abhishek Prasad, who is the Employee Workflow Solution and Sales rep from ServiceNow. We have Chris Wright, Director of Sales Enterprise West Employee Experience, and Aaron Maxwell, who is a member of my team at LinkedIn. He's a senior HR tech partner. Let's do some quick personal introductions, Jeff, if that sounds good. Abhishek, would you like to start?
Abhishek, you are on mute. There you go.
Yes, yeah, that's the usual thing for all these Zooms. I can't wait to get back in person if we ever get to the old normal, as they say. But thank you so much for scheduling this. And thank you so much for Tiffany for inviting us at ServiceNow to be a partner. We are partnering at work for a number of initiatives, and I'm really eager to talk about that as we go through this discussion. But as a brief introduction, as Tiffany mentioned, I'm not that old, but I've been focusing on HR technology for a number of years, and across a number of countries. It goes without saying that I've actually sold in countries across Asia Pacific, starting from Hong Kong all the way west to India. And when you start looking at my experience, it's been done with a lot of help from the whole ecosystem of partners. So I have worked with Oracle, SuccessFactors, SAP, Workday, and finally the best, ServiceNow, for the last 5 years, both in Asia, based out of Singapore, and right now based out of San Francisco Bay Area for the last 3 years. And it goes without saying that when we are looking at customers like LinkedIn, global customers who have global operations, they're not just going to look at one solution. We want that whole ecosystem to come together and really make sure that, okay, the customer's objectives are being met. So happy to discuss more in terms of how we collaborate both with the ecosystem and with the customer. So that's a little bit about me. I'll request Chris to introduce himself, who's my manager, by the way.
Thanks, Abhishek, and thanks, Tiffany, for the lead in and everybody for their time today. So Chris Wright, I run the West for our strategic and major accounts here at ServiceNow. Been at ServiceNow for 5.5 years, which, Tiffany, we put together the years there. It does go fast. It is amazing. Prior to that, similar to Abhishek, right? I've worked at some of the large companies like Oracle, then also at Taleo, and twice actually worked at Taleo from the talent side. But I got my start in learning. So worked my way through learning, through talent acquisition, and then success factors even coming in there when it came to really changing the way I think organizations look at talent that's in-house. So excited to hear today some feedback from the collective group here, but also talk about what's near and dear to our heart here at ServiceNow is the employee at the center of all of it. That's really what I think what's unique here that we like to look at, and listening to our client. And we know when we come into all of our clients is, they have an ecosystem already of technology and vendors that are bringing value. How can we really bring that to the forefront, make it easy for the employee and not be disruptive? And really there's, as our CEO says, Bill McDermott, right? No one has to lose for us to win. And really who's winning is the end customer, and for you all, it's your end employee. So excited to be part of this today. I'll go ahead and pass it over to Aaron.
Great. Thank you, Chris. I'm Aaron Maxwell. I joined Tiffany's team as an HR tech partner in December of 2021 at LinkedIn. So just about 8 months in, I am a PMP certified IT project manager, bringing over 12 years of experience in the HR tech space, from program leadership to ERP and HCM systems administration, as well as HRIT project management. So both in the weeds, hands-on, from more of an analyst level to managing projects at a higher level. I've worked in a range of different industries, from higher education to defense contractor to doing consulting on PeopleSoft implementations. But more specifically, looking at ServiceNow, I've been involved in a number of ServiceNow ITSM implementations, and now currently standing up HR service delivery at LinkedIn, along with focusing on our digital HR strategy as we establish a long-term HR tech vision that will focus on our foundations while enabling us to transform and innovate the employee experience. So with that being said, I'm going to hand it back to Tiffany.
So thanks. Let's get into it. Before we go into questions, and I just want to make sure, if folks have comments or questions, please add those to the chat. And I do like a little, interaction in these types of sessions. So let's start off first. I'm going to say a little bit about LinkedIn, and then we'll get into kind of what type of work we're doing with ServiceNow, and maybe Abhishek or Chris, you all could just give us some baseline information about ServiceNow. But I just have a quick question to put out to the group, and just respond in the chat to say, like, when's the last time you logged in and checked your LinkedIn profile? I'm just curious. I'm going to put my answer is today, but it would be cool to see if how active our audience is on the platform. LinkedIn was launched in 2003. Oh, that's funny. Within the last minute. That's funny. LinkedIn was launched in 2003. We had 830 million members in 200 countries. I actually joined LinkedIn in 2007. I had to go, there's actually a way you can go into your profile and see that. But I've been an advocate of the profile of the platform from the beginning of my membership, and seen value in it. So I'm not just saying that because I work there. Our vision is to create economic opportunity for every member of the global workforce. And we do that through our core platform. And of course, many of you know about Premium LinkedIn, and then LinkedIn Recruiter, LinkedIn Learning, LinkedIn Recruiting Marketing. The list goes on and on. When I think about ServiceNow and our relationship, it's interesting because we're really clients of each other. And before we get into specific project, maybe Abhishek or Chris, tell us more about ServiceNow and what you offer and provide. And I think we've been with you all for 8 years, if that's correct.
That's right. And Chris, feel free to add on to this. So 2013, it's almost 9 years now when you start looking at it. But not only has LinkedIn been a customer for ServiceNow solutions, starting with our base solution, if you might say, which is around IT service management, which was the first use case that the platform solved for. But we ourselves are also customers of LinkedIn, various solutions that LinkedIn have been using. So not only in our personal, but also in our professional terms, we have been using LinkedIn internally at ServiceNow. LinkedIn has been rapidly expanding the usage of ServiceNow for various business functions, starting with IT, then to HR, but it's used across different businesses and different business functions.
Yeah, so I think I'd add, LinkedIn Learning. I know being a hiring manager, I work closely with our talent team here, and that is, of course, the number one place. And you mentioned, my LinkedIn profile. It's been a little while. I've updated it 3 months ago because I was going for a promotion, but my networks every day. And being fortunate enough to work at a company that's we're still in a very big growth trajectory. I get a lot of reach outs from folks inside and around in that network. Hopefully some people here today. So yeah, in it every day, but you guys are a big part of our everyday. And I know as a hiring manager and our recruiting team, it's critical.
Right. Well, now that we have that baseline, let's talk a little bit more about how we're partnering and the work that we're doing together. And it'll lead into some more questions about how can vendors and clients kind of maximize this relationship. When I joined, I know I was really thrown into the fire in this role. The HR Tech Partner team is a new team, but one of the initiatives that was in front of us was around looking at HR operations and how we could better enable that team to do the work that they do from a case knowledge and reporting standpoint. Jumped right into discovery sessions. I remember, Abhishek, I think that's the first way that we met and again, we're in this virtual world. It was one of those discovery calls for your team to understand our needs and for us to understand, some of your offerings, specifically HRSD. When I want to paint the picture for the audience, like this, we have a large cross-functional team at LinkedIn. And I think in this vein, it's important for the vendor that, in this case, ServiceNow, to come in and engage the right people. It cuts down on, playing the game of telephone and duplicate meetings. So identifying those key stakeholders is something that ServiceNow did really well, and in collaboration with us, right? And me being new in role and working internally to make sure we did have some of the right people in those meetings. It can be a challenge when you have a large organization, or if you're building out a team at the same time. But to give more context, I've got to defer to Aaron to just give the audience a little bit more detail around the project that we are working on with ServiceNow, and then we'll turn to Abhishek and Chris for insight as well.
Thank you, Tiffany. So yeah, our focus really at LinkedIn is to deliver a best on planet service delivery experience to our workforce across moments that matter in their life cycle. So Tiffany alluded to a large cross-functional team. Well, we have an even broader stakeholder base. All of our employees do rely on ServiceNow in one form or fashion. We have support teams, we have hiring managers, we have new hires, we have contingent workers and contractors. So, the underlying engine that ServiceNow provides allows us to do a lot. It gives us the capabilities to deliver, but we haven't been able to this point, capitalize or maximize that. So with over 18,000 workers spread across 34 sites, increasing services, increased complexity, and a workforce growing by 20% in the previous fiscal year, scaling that best on planet service delivery experience can be a significant challenge. And that's where we really look towards ServiceNow and our relationship with them. We found that ServiceNow has truly invested in our partnership and success along this journey through each phase of the project thus far. They've provided guidance on business and technical decisions, as well as sharing more details on their suite of products and the latest news on best practices, as well as upcoming releases. We have a relatively new set of members on the cross-functional team, especially from our HR team. So it's really about bringing them into the fold and ensuring they have the comfort level and the bandwidth to really capitalize on this relationship with ServiceNow, as well as to deliver value on this project and going forward. So Abhishek, I'll hand it off to you now.
Yes, and I distinctly remember the first time we met Tiffany, and and Tiffany kind of underplayed a little. The complexity is also there with the geographical location of various stakeholders at LinkedIn. And this is something that we have found very common in typical customers like LinkedIn. Like, you have stakeholders at different geos because you are addressing the needs of employees in across regions, across countries. And it's not that LinkedIn does not have, or any customer does not have technology solutions which are existing. But when you're starting to meld it together and bring that, be that service layer for employees when they need information, when they need help, when they are reaching out to their business partners, stakeholders in HR, be it in HR, IT, finance, and so on, how can that be more seamless? So that was the fundamental question and discussion point that we had with Tiffany and her team, saying, what is that use case? How can we be of use? And when we started discussing, we also realized that ServiceNow by itself, we have a very similar technology infrastructure to LinkedIn. We also use the same core HR system. And it was a coincidence that we were moving to a new applicant tracking system, Smart Recruiters, at the same time. So making sure that all these things come together, learn from each other's best practices, not just from a vendor provider point of view, a vendor customer point of view, but also from a peer-to-peer networking. So those are also calls, conversations that we arranged so that LinkedIn gets the LinkedIn team, which was fairly new, gets a holistic view of what ServiceNow provides, what it's consuming, what other customers are doing, from an ecosystem perspective. Chris, do you want to add something which is?
Yeah, I'll stay real quick. I mean, I think, complexity can come to organizations, don't have to be pushing 20,000 employee organization, right? That, in my experience in the last 5 years, is complexity can come pretty quickly when they're a growth company. So, whether we can help them or not is just understanding what that complexity is like, where those points that friction that are going on either behind the scenes and of course for the employees. So for those that are listening that, hey, we're a smaller organization, it's been my experience in working with companies that are growing that, complexity can come pretty fast. I've seen a lot of 1,000-person companies, especially in tech and media, that, really start to see the same pains, in a lot of areas.
Now, I did ask the question in the chat, what other participants have found themselves in the throes of either, discovery or working with a client, if you're on the ecosystem side, or if you're a client, where you've had to navigate that. I would imagine it's fairly common, because when you're looking at large or global organizations, it's just, to me, it's going to be a common factor. I like that you pointed out, Abhishek, in the beginning. It did resonate with me that ServiceNow had the similar kind of tech stack, not in every way, but in some of those core ways that you mentioned. And I think it did help us to kind of align for you all to understand what our pain points are. When I move to this next question, it's really around, what do you think has made us successful, or generally speaking, what makes any org successful when embarking on this type of journey with a vendor? And for me, those things that come to mind are communication and understanding of those challenges and pain points, which again, we were in a we were in an ideal state that you could truly like relate because you use some of the same systems. But then it's also making sure that we're aligned on the core objectives, that engagement from the beginning, right? Whether it's, in that RFP stage or that sales cycle stage or the pitch stage, that those are the times from a customer perspective to really voice what those outcomes that you're looking for are, but for the vendor to also ask those questions. And that should continue once the system, in my opinion, once it's live. That's how you kind of really engage around a roadmap versus just a point in time. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but I would love to have each of the panelists kind of chime in on, what do you think has made us successful this far in this journey, or what do you suggest for any organization? Maybe we'll go, Aaron, to you first.
Great. Thanks, Tiffany. So I think most importantly is open dialogue. I think having that ability to be transparent and to be able to voice concerns around a vendor's products or suite of products, it really is important for companies, especially in the HR tech space, to be able to have a strong vendor relationship with their vendors, but also the ability to speak honestly and openly or candidly regarding their successes and opportunities and challenges that we're experiencing, both at an organizational level and more specifically to the tech stack and technology that we're providing our own stakeholders internally. So I've also found the most successful HR tech vendors are able to get into the weeds with us to really kind of look under the hood and to really dissect and provide resources to further understand some of the challenges that we're experiencing across the tech landscape, as well as the direction we're heading with our HR tech roadmap. So I think it's truly a partnership, every essence of that word. And it really gives us an opportunity to further expand on that relationship. So I'll hand it off to Abhishek now.
Yeah. Thanks, Aaron. And one thing that we have also noticed is as our relationship has evolved, things around us have also changed, transformed. We went into a pandemic and thought that, okay, it's going to be 3 months or 3 weeks. Then it turned into 3 months. Then it's been a significant amount of time. We heard that, okay, hybrid work, people working virtually so there are different service needs for an employee. But then we also heard that, and we also felt, not only as a vendor, but as we are working with customers, that how do you make sure that you are able to address employees' needs collaboratively, most effectively when you're working, everything is gone virtual to a certain extent, especially for software companies like ourselves. Then there was this whole discussion around, or the whole range of topic around the big resignation. So retaining talent, making sure that you're able to have that talent in place. That was also important. So where I'm going with this is that things are changing in the externals world in terms of how organizations are looking at talent, and it has changed since. It is doing that. So as we start working with customers, with Tiffany, with Aaron and the team, the constant communication, the regular communication of making sure, okay, what are those use cases? What are you solving for? How are you aligning to your organization goals? And how can we be of help from a technology point of view to help you achieve those objectives? I think this regular communication with Tiffany, Aaron, and the extended LinkedIn team, making sure that, okay, hey, what is there in the roadmap? What are the best practices? And making sure that, okay, we stay as I say, partners, not just from a sales perspective, but overall from a success perspective. We are in a business where we do not want to sell and say, hey, that's been done. we want to see customers succeed and customers to keep on leveraging our solution as and we developing it as a result. And I think this is a good segue for Chris to kind of lean in and give his experience of what he has seen with other customers too across the region.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. You touched on a lot of good stuff, everybody. What I always come back to is, and I think you both articulated this, but what are those guiding principles that you're always going to come back to? Because, Ward, I saw your question in there, that there's so many opportunities usually when we sit down, right? And there's a list of pain point areas, and we want to dive tactically into those and show stuff, right? I've been in technology. I love to get there quickly. But at the end of the day, our clients that are most successful, it is the two groups. It is the HR, HRIT, and as well as the IT org, right? And how they see this together. Because at the end of the day, what we're able to solve is not just from the HR needs, right? Is also a broken laptop, a password reset. So those other pieces that are important, I go to the same place. But when those groups are looking at their roadmaps and they come back to what are those 3 or 4 guiding principles? Because when we get stuck in the rat hole, which we will, and that's fine, to work through it, taking a step back and saying, all right, everybody, is it solving for one of these 3 things? It sounds simple, but to get to those 3 or 4 things is going to be either like we can help facilitate it sometimes, or great partners that we work with to work together. Because we look at SaaS, we're taking a real big step back. It has allowed organizations to be siloed and solve for those business challenges. And what we're doing, what we're seeing is we're bringing that back together for the value of a platform, one code base to do that. But we got to make sure that, we have the same goals in mind. So again, it's one of those things that's simple but complex to get there. Because we want to dive into and get into the nitty gritty of all those great things we can solve for. But if we're not coming back to those, how are we going to go back and have sustained success that's going to last beyond when I'm going to be on the account, or Abhishek or you all that's there? I think that's super important.
Yeah, I want to add on 2 things before moving to the next question. I mean, Abhishek, you mentioned, this virtual world that we were forced to operate in due to the pandemic that was elongated more so than any of us would have imagined. And quite frankly, like none of us have actually met in person yet, right? And in past, roles with past employers, it was a constant for me to engage with a customer support manager or an account exec or someone on a regular. They were flying in, I was flying somewhere, going to a conference. So we've had to work around that. That FaceTime truly is valuable. I think we're going to start to see that coming back, but we've had to figure out how to connect and align and have those honest conversations without doing it face to face, which I think is new on both sides, to do that. And moving to the next question, it's maybe controversial, but it's about sharing the tech stack, right? So the question, more so being, as a vendor or as a customer, how open are we about saying these are all the solutions that we utilize? Sometimes in some cases, maybe competitors. I can't think of any place that I've particularly worked where I wasn't open about that. And that our partners didn't know what else existed in our ecosystem. That said, I've been in some organizations where maybe there were only 2 or 3, to be quite frank, some of those smaller organizations. So it was really simple to say we use, Taleo and SAP and ServiceNow, right? Those are the 3, but at LinkedIn, it's unique. Again, as I mentioned, we are a provider of products in our own way from an HR tech perspective. And then we have some really bright engineers that have built some custom applications that we use from an HR perspective. So for us to share our tech stack, it's a lot to it. But again, I don't see a problem with that. I think it's critical to do so, specifically to make sure, ServiceNow is aware of all of our SaaS providers. As you all are looking to advise us, you'd be at a detriment not to know that information. I'll turn to Aaron, and ask, what has been your stance when you've worked at other places, and what have you seen in terms of, being transparent about that tech stack with your vendor partners?
Absolutely. So, really, it is unique in terms of the time we're in. In 2022, vendors are delivering solutions that integrate with other vendors. It hasn't always been that way. So that's been a real change, I think, over the past decade, probably a little bit less, where we're looking at ServiceNow and they're delivering solutions or integrations that will tie into a Workday product or another SaaS application. So, and not to get specific, of course, but I think it is really crucial to call that out, because it gives organizations or customers more of that that attention to detail around what their current tech stack is, and not just the vanilla approach. So in my experience, the focus is that organizations can be transparent, and that SaaS vendors especially have the ability to better share the value of their products based on how knowledgeable that they are around their customers' ecosystems and tech stack. So it certainly helps with addressing issues based on a lack of integrated technology and disjointed employee experiences, and how that really ties back to what products that they're really servicing and providing. I'll hand it off to you, Chris.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's, when I was at Taleo, it brought to my attention quickly that, you'd wonder, okay, well, what do they use for applicant tracking? And that's the one technology that can see what everybody's using, right? It's on your career page. I can go there, I can right click, and I can see, even if you put a mask on it, and it gives you an idea, like just even from the outside in. I've never came across your organization. That's one area I can go to right away, right? And now with Glassdoor, I can see other things too out from the outside. But yeah, by and large, it's not the here's what the systems that we use. So at that part of it, we do get pretty easy. The next piece is then where we got to build that trust is, all right, where are the areas that we can help improve? What are some of the statistics behind that? Whether it's the number of employees who support that, or the time to fulfill these things. That next level, that again, that's trust that's earned. So we have to do our job, add value, and build that trust to then get that information. But just what the tech stack is pretty straightforward, in my opinion. You're right, it does. We're in that information type of let's share. And again, we're talking to organizations. We have over, ServiceNow has 8,000 total customers, and 1,500 of those use HR some way, shape, or form. So they understand a little bit, but they understand kind of what we do. But we always usually have to understand a little bit more about what they have to give them the full picture of what we can do for them. So yeah, for us, that's kind of what I see. And Abhishek, you're on the front line more than me now, so maybe you have other thoughts on that.
Thanks, Chris, and thanks, Aaron, Tiffany. And Aaron, you brought a good point, which says that, okay, in the last 10 years, you've seen vendors kind of be more collaborative. So I think in the past, a lot of the vendors approach, and I've worked for a few, and so have you interacted with a few too, where they're looking at a monolith approach, saying that, okay, we can solve everything from hire to retire, whatever your needs are. But the truth lies, once you uncover the hood, there was an analyst finding that at any given organization with 10,000 plus employees, you have at least 16 different systems just from a talent perspective. Forget about overall HR, just from a talent perspective. So one thing we started realizing, and it might not happen in the first call when you're actually meeting the customer for the first time, saying, okay, can you be frank with your tech stack? Why will they share with someone like a vendor, like any vendor for that matter? But when you start looking at what use case you are solving for, which in our case is like overall employee experience, we cannot exist in isolation. We need to talk to other systems, be it right from an onboarding point of view, whether it's a talent acquisition system, applicant tracking system, when an employee onboards, to a benefit system, which a retiree might go to when they offboard. So everything in between, you are actually touched with an employee when we start talking about moments that matter. It's about bringing in all these systems together so that the right information is presented to that employee, who at the end of the day is our ultimate customer, be it for Tiffany and team and be it for us. How do we make sure that the right information for that employee is provided so that they can take action? And that is presented in a holistic manner. So no longer existing in isolation, being a monolith and saying we can do all, that doesn't really exist in reality. So talking to customers, being frank, getting them to trust you so that they can start sharing more about what are the other technology stack they're using, and also talking to those partners, people like yourselves, saying how do we make our integration tighter so that we can bring that value add to end customers, because that's how we provide that value and we strengthen our business.
No, I love that. I want to take this a level deeper and talk about that true ecosystem partnership, and how important is that? You know, to put it bluntly, how critical is it for vendors to play nice, right, together? And if I look over the course of my 20-year career, I can't say that in all circumstances, and of course it doesn't apply to the current day with ServiceNow and the relationship we have, but literally other roles I've had, there hasn't always been that play nice. It's almost like the focus has been, how can we get them to change from Taleo to this, right? Because it's like, well, we want to get more of that market share. And sometimes that kind of, again, it's a distraction away from like that collaborative sense. But I've seen a shift in that over, again, as Aaron mentioned, over the last 10 years. But when do you know as a vendor, you know, when to knock on that door, either, you know, to kind of say, let's talk about collaboration through a partner and introducing a partner versus saying, you know, no, we can do that too. I would imagine it's difficult, and maybe you take your cues from the client to see if they're truly trying to do an RFP or consolidate or you know, how do you tackle that? And either Chris or Abhishek, if you'd like to start.
Yeah, I'll kick that one off real quick. You know, it is something you do have to listen for the right cues and understand the timing of things, what's recently gone live, who owns that side of that new go live, whatever that system might be, and you don't want to step on that. But you know, the reality is over the last decade in the HR tech world, there's a lot of overlap, right? Somebody offers something that you know is a core competency, but you're going into other areas. So you try to understand that, and understand, again, if you built a trust, you understand that you know, they have a need in that other area. You've earned the right to, you know, learn a little bit more, ask that question, hopefully, right? Because you have that trust built, because you're going into that. I don't think, you know, it would you know, be foolish if you were going out and rushing with a new product to the market, right? You're going to a trusted customer to say, we'd love your feedback because we've spoken and you have a need in this area, and we'd love to get your feedback and be you know, an advisor, if you will, because there's some key areas we think you benefit from. So you kind of have to look at it that way, I think. And again, when it comes to working with the other you know, vendors, I have in some of these that are these large transformation projects that are happening, that, you know, moving to the cloud is still happening for core system of HR. At the same time, the employee experience in that messaging, you know, behind the scenes, we've spoken to make sure what's best, because it does get confusing on that topic too. So yeah, I think, you know, again, you gotta earn that. I think you understand your core competency and what your value bring, and know that, you know, that's an area that they're going in another direction. That's fine. We have plenty of other, let's keep adding value here and move on.
Yeah, and if I may take it just a little bit one level deeper, looking at a specific use case, because I come, as Chris mentioned, I come across this day in, day out. If I were to look at onboarding as a use case, and an applicant tracking system, that's where an offer is generated and sent out to a potential new hire. So look at the touch points from an onboarding point of view. You are looking at a document, an e-signing platform, whether it's Adobe, who incidentally is also a customer of ServiceNow. You also are looking at making sure that everything is provisioned right for that employee, whether it's through Okta, whether there are certain HR tasks that need to be done, whether it's through Workday, whether the payroll needs to be set up through ADP or any other payroll provider, and the list goes on. The thing is, every single vendor says that we do onboarding. So we are not saying that, okay, we are not competing with anyone when it comes to onboarding. But when you start looking at what the customer is looking for, are they looking for an enterprise-wide onboarding, bringing all these different vendors together and talking, making sure that they talk to each other, because they, as Chris said, they solve for specific use cases, although we might be creeping into each other's areas a certain bit. But there are these core competencies like Adobe's e-sign, where when you're looking at e-signature for that matter, when you're looking at Okta and so on. So how do you look at process from a process perspective, and then the technology comes in, which is where the vendors really need to play, I'll say, collaborative, so that LinkedIn gets its objectives of having that seamless onboarding experience. And this holds true for any use case that a customer is trying to solve for. So why create that friction and cause any kind of, I'll say, because what this friction is going to result in dissatisfaction for the end customer. End of the day is it's all about pointing fingers. We want to avoid that. And that's what our objective is, to make sure that, okay, how do we meet customers' needs?
No, I think a key point that has surfaced through the course of this conversation is this whole idea of employee experience. And I can tell you, when I got into this career of HR tech, no one was even using that phrase, right? It was definitely more kind of each COE was doing their own siloed thing. And then that's where the disjointedness started. And now you're hearing much more about employee experience. And that isn't so much like there was always this best in breed approach versus a one shop. And we didn't really land on either one of those. It's now, to me, most organizations, you're going to have to have an ecosystem. So I think that's important. I mean, Aaron, I would just ask maybe if you'd like to share what you've seen at LinkedIn or other organizations around, do you think clients or customers tend to think, let me look at what I have or the partners of that HCM, that core HCM that we're using, or do you think they go off on their own? Or what's your thought there?
I think it's a great question. Honestly, yes. I think underlying answer is yes, but it does depend on the industry. And it's funny that you mentioned this earlier, Tiffany, but you're exactly right. The tech companies typically have a robust engineering team who have an appetite to deliver custom homegrown solutions and applications. We've seen that time and time again internally, to be transparent, but also I've seen it in other industries as well. It's not just specific to tech. I don't know if that's a best practice, especially as we see these vendors, SaaS vendors, being able to deliver better integrated technology that really does play nice, quote unquote, with other vendors' applications. So, looking at HR-driven decisions and those decision makers, I think they understand that in the HCM space, that many of these vendors have continued to perfect their suite of products. Looking at, especially through the pandemic, where talent was at a premium and ATS applications and talent strategy is really top of mind. And now thinking, as we move into 2022 and later into, 2023, talent development and how do we retain those employees, and learning and development suites, and tying that technology back to the core HCM and back to these platforms like a ServiceNow, for example. So, I think the goal really is, for a lot of the customers, from my perspective, is to have a more personalized set of solutions rather than just a vanilla one-size-fits-all approach. Success truly does look different from customer to customer. So I think as long as vendors keep that in mind and understand that it is really top of mind for their clients, it goes a long way.
No, I love that. And I'm watching the time. I think we're doing really good on time. We want to save space in case there are questions. So if you do have a question, if you don't want to lose that, please feel free to put it in the chat. But I want to talk about, how do you go from, an implementation to a consistent partnership? and something that's not driven by a point in time. I know, again, in this role, but prior roles, you kind of get caught up on those key milestones around like an RFP or implementation, a go live, a project kickoff, contract renewal, maybe an upsell on something new. But how do we shift to more strategic dialogue and engagement? Sorry to come back to you so quickly, Aaron. Hopefully you have your glass of water there, but I know that you're overseeing our new monthly syncs with our friends at ServiceNow relative to our HRSD project. But how do you see that transitioning as the project goes on in this vein in terms of keeping that engagement going?
Absolutely. I think it's important to really recognize, the beginnings of the relationship, which obviously was before this project even kicked off. That we did have an existing relationship from our program management team and more on our engineering team. And we're moving that conversation across now to our business stakeholders, to our HR operations teams. So I think that's really helped expand ServiceNow's understanding of what we're really trying to accomplish. In terms of the project itself, we've really, I think, been able to get more in depth with a lot of the pain points and the issues that we're experiencing on a day-to-day basis with our applications, with some of our disjointed systems and lack of integrations, that we could really improve the employee experience, the HR manager experience, operational support teams experience. So I think we have a lot of opportunities there that really using the lift of a technology like ServiceNow is going to allow us to kind of move forward. And so conveying this type of, these types of concerns and goals and strategies back with our, customer support team at ServiceNow, we've been able to really be educated on the various new features and functionality that their platform is delivering, and how it truly applies to our current landscape and day-to-day operational experience. Now, our goal is to move forward to a frictionless, personalized, engaged employee experience from pre-boarding to day one and beyond through the moments that matter. So with that in mind, I think educating ServiceNow on that has allowed us through the project stages to get, I think, a more fruitful conversation going. And, really as we move from discovery to design and now development phases, the conversations changed from the RFP and kind of what are we doing from a resourcing standpoint to more of a specific technical and configuration review, and as well as considerations of future state and what does that look like. We have also opened up conversations as we start planning out UAT, go live and post-production support, and what that model looks like, as well as our training model. I can say that, ServiceNow training modules and certification courses are incredibly robust, having actually participated in some of them myself. So, I do have to plug ServiceNow because not every vendor does have that level of training courses that they just deliver from the onset. It feels very personalized. So I'll hand it over to Chris now.
No, thanks, Aaron. Thank you for the plug. I wish I could say I was a certified on that tech side, but maybe Abhishek. This is a great topic, and I think from our perspective, right, and what we hold, the view of the Nirvana is at the different levels, right? We have a great with Abhishek, and Aaron's a good example of at the project and at the level that folks that are making it really happen. And if we can also have an executive overview and oversight to that on our side too, some skin in the game to make sure that we're accountable as well. The old, no news is good news. That holds true to some degree, but at the same time, making sure we're aligned again to the company's objectives, right? And understanding, especially, this is a really good example because we are customers and collaborators of each other. There is that, hopefully we're going to lean into that even more, but that's the perfect world. And then from our side, we're talking about and viewing every quarter how your relationships are with your customers. And we even put a red, yellow, green into, not just like they may be a referenceable account, but now they're newer, maybe they took over or got promoted or whatever. are you establishing a connection? Do you know Tiffany is and who her, in there? And not just because it's, advantageous, but because if things shift and priorities shift, we want to have those connections. And I think that's important. All the other pieces that they're table stakes that you guys are doing right now. But again, you're a perfect example. Like there is going to be an event, and how do we keep that momentum? The balance of eye on the prize of the go live, and then also, what does that look like going forward? Because that's the biggest piece, is there's so much opportunity for where we can help in our customers. It is like, no, this is great, but let's stay focused. So again, I think it's that the different layers of connections that are super important.
Abhishek, would you add anything there, even particular to, what a vendor should do from a different roles in an organization, from the executive down to the person who's actually doing the configuration, and how to keep those different stakeholders engaged post launch, post go live, and kind of keeping where they might have distinct needs or focus areas? Like how do you navigate that?
Yeah, I think Chris alluded to that. Thanks for asking me that question, Tiffany. Is the kind of engagement or the kind of cadence that we set up for these engagements. So when you're looking at somebody who's actually in the weeds, expanding on the platform and the technology to meet certain process needs, that might be done on a more higher frequency basis. But there has to be multiple touch points with the business owners, with the executive sponsors. So how do we establish that cadence so that no news is good news? That whole concept is, I think, dead and buried right now, but that constant communication. And it is becoming all the more challenging because of a couple of things. One is a lot of the things we are doing virtually. The second is that as advent of SaaS, as we have seen the last 10 plus years, everything is going to be delivered, like software is going to be delivered as a service, which means the kind of innovation that is coming out is not once a year or twice a year. It's literally coming out every month. Now, sometimes it becomes overwhelming for customers to be on top of what it is or what is the new innovation that is coming in. Because they are doing day-to-day operations and they are trying to make things right. They're trying to keep the lights on. But if you're looking at enhancing this relationship, this constant communication ensures that, okay, the customer is kept up to date in terms of there are specific capabilities, features, etc. If you go down to those details, which are coming up on a highly frequent basis compared to what used to be delivered in the past for these kind of transformative projects. So transformation is not just once in 4 years or 5 years, it's a continuous journey. So this regular communication at multiple levels, that is very, very important to establish.
No, very, very true. And transformation is a marathon, not a sprint, I think, in an organization of any size. As we close out, so I know we're tight on time, Jeff, so I'm watching that. I think the last question for this panel that we'll cover is, what's one piece of advice that you would offer to vendors or to clients? Mine is really quick and easy. To vendors, ask a lot of questions and listen. To customers, ask a lot of questions and listen. Right? It's about that communication, and that's how we stay in sync. If I think about from a personal perspective, I have a personal trainer and a hairstylist that I've worked with for like 10 years. And the reason that loyalty is there is the communication. If I'm having a struggle with my workout or my weight or my hair, I can go to them, and sometimes they do send me, hey, use this product, or go to this partner, go to this other gym and do something different. And that's the same thing I think that customers are looking for from vendors. And you only get that by that back and forth, that true dialogue, continuous dialogue. But really quickly, if we could just go across the panel. Chris, maybe you want to start first before you come off mute.
I'll just say real quick, I think, from our side is, first, don't assume, and then also make sure you understand what's in it for them too, right? I mean, what is this? Hopefully his journey, this phase, doing for them? Is it more time at home? What are those areas? Of course, we talked about the table stakes of the company and aligning on that, but don't forget about what's in it for them. That'd be my advice. Abhishek, you want to go?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'll just ditto what Tiffany said about always be asking questions in the right frame, in the right way. Don't be over inquisitive, but also from a point of view that, okay, hey, we are looking out for each other. As Tiffany mentioned, that she has been a loyal customer to her stylist and to her personal trainer. So they know what she needs at a given point of time and how her needs are going to change based on certain events, certain life steps, etc. So having that level of transparency also helps, and that comes through being an honest and a true collaborator, and always coming from a good place in terms of asking questions and finding out what has changed and making sure that you're looking out for your customers.
And Aaron, maybe a quick soundbite from you, and then we pass back over to Jeff.
Sure. Yeah, I would say proactive. Being proactive as a vendor, as a SaaS solution provider. I've got to say, from an HR lens, from an HR leader's lens, there's enough on the plate from the day to day, and thinking future strategy to keep up with compliance concerns and the various regulations that are being passed. So if you can really hone in on the legislative landscape and really kind of deliver that up front and take that out of our purview and not have to like constantly think about, are we compliant? Are we doing all of the right things in all of the areas and regions and locations that we operate in? That goes a long way and a huge lift off of the shoulders of your HR customers. So thanks, Tiffany.
Awesome. Jeff, over to you with 1 minute to spare, I think.
Wow. I've got a number of wows there. Wow. Not only was that just amazing, and I learned a huge amount, and I know our audience did, and I'm sure everyone that listens to this recording will, but Tiffany, I mean, the transitions from person to person were seamless. The timing was amazing. I mean, you didn't even need me to jump in. You knew that there were 5 minutes left. The questions, I mean, you're kind of like automating out my job now. You're making me irrelevant.
She's gunning for it.
I don't like it. But I will say, I was going to say a word. The next time Tiffany can jump, she can jump right in. That was amazing. Incredibly well done. And so, Ward, I'm going to hand it back to you.